Hello, welcome to the Pro Wrestling Power Hour. This is a new podcast that myself and Jordan, who you may know from the Game for All podcast and me from Eat Sleep Game, I've decided to do because we both really like wrestling and we both really want to just talk about wrestling.
Yeah, it gives us something else to talk about on a semi-regular basis.
Exactly.
I think we decided these episodes to start with are going to be every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do well, we will give you more content.
Yes.
I think we decided it's going to be topic-based most of the time. So
Absolutely.
We're not going to be a news podcast. We will recap major shows and stuff like that when the time comes. But we're not going to be recapping the week in wrestling or anything like that.
Because we don't have enough time to watch it all.
No.
Unfortunately.
And it's all great. That's the thing. It's all great.
We'll
get into that.
Well, it can be. It can be. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm really good. Yeah. I'm coming off, obviously, WrestleMania Night 1 at the time of recording.
Oh, I've still got an hour left to watch.
So I just finished it literally just before we were recording.
Oh, okay.
And it's so good.
Yeah,
I watched some of it last night, and it was one of those things where I was like, this is so good. Do I want to stay up and watch the whole thing? Because normally for a big show I would, but today I had some stuff to do in the morning. I was like, I need to get up. I know that I'm recording tomorrow as well. And it's like, so I decided to sleep. But I've never, so part of being a wrestling fan is I haven't actually missed any episode of WWE programming for over 15 years.
I've fully dipped out for a while,
which is crazy, but we'll get into that. But yeah, I'm one thing I will say is I'm not going to spoil anything for you because you haven't finished the show. You haven't finished Night 1, but my God, the WWE know how to do a show when it really matters.
I mean, in the lead up, it was kind of like, oh, this is going to be shit.
Yeah.
And then actually get into it. I finished Strowman versus McMahon.
Okay.
And even that was really fun.
Yeah.
Like, as much as Shane McMahon annoys me because he just gets too involved, he's actually really fun
he does have
when
his
he's
part
wrestling.
To play, right? Like when he has a match.
Yeah, in the actual match, he's
for
great.
a reason.
In the actual match, he's a lot of fun to watch. He's he's way better than he used to be. He's been doing Muay Thai and kickboxing and shit like that. Yeah, and he lays it in.
Sure. And he does have that Daredevil aspect. Like it does seem like he is just.
I still like when he popped the coast to coast, and I'm like, he still does that so great.
Yeah,
it's pretty dope. I still love the coast to coast. Great move.
But yeah, I want to give WWE props because I'm sure that in the course of this podcast, over however long we decide to keep it going, we're going to give WWE some shit.
Absolutely.
But my God, they always pull it out for WrestleMania, right? Like even when you think WrestleMania isn't going to be good, they somehow make it deliver. And one thing I will say is it was actually quite touching to have Vince McMahon kind of welcome the fans back, and
that was a great start,
and all that stuff. It was really cool. And then we thought it was going to be delayed because of bad weather. It was like,
yeah, that was insane. We're just having a rain check. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why? Okay.
But yeah, obviously we haven't seen Night 2 yet. As
we're really looking forward to Night 2,
but I'm really looking forward to Night 2. Obviously Edge, Daniel Bryan, and Roman Reigns.
I went from really not caring because I don't think Edge should have won the Royal Rumble to being like,
interesting. We'll get into that. because
so this one's going to be a bit of like a general discussion sort of thing.
Because I think we'll talk about some of our favorite wrestlers.
Yes,
some of our history with wrestling, of course, was our plan, and then maybe some of our kind of favorite matches as well, just so that people can get to know what kind of wrestling fans we are, I guess. So why don't you start, Luke? Because this whole thing was your idea, and I think actually before we get into our history with wrestling,
Yes.
we should explain how this show came about in the first place,
Mm.
because it is quite funny, really, how it came about.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember exactly what it was that like. Because we both enjoy podcasting. Podcasting is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Just
we
chatting
just
shit with
enjoyed.
friends and
Yeah,
recording it. But yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was Fastlane. It might have
yeah,
been Fastlane.
and I think initially you made a tweet, right, where you were
Yeah,
like,
I
"I
remember the
really
tweet.
feel like doing
Yeah,
a wrestling
I
podcast."
can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was Fastlane. And the probably more specifically the Daniel Bryan Roman Reigns match. So I
Yeah.
thought that was fantastic. I thought it was a great
Yes.
match. And I just randomly kind of tweeted, it's like, I kind of feel like doing a wrestling podcast. I want to chat shit with wrestling people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Jordan responded.
And then I sort of responded like, "Yeah, anytime."
Yeah.
But then, more recently, it went a little bit of a step further because we were sort of joking around about it, and then it just became a reality.
Yeah, I mean, my only real hesitation was like I don't watch anything but pay-per-views really.
Yeah.
I used to watch NXT, but since it's changed on the network and it's not like a day later anymore,
Mm-hmm.
I've just given up trying to watch it because by the time it actually comes out, I've know what's happened, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So it kind of loses the point.
But the thing is, I think you are one of those fans where you don't necessarily watch everything, but you try and keep up with what's going on, right?
Oh
Even
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're...
Whether it's through like Instagram, Twitter, or like Cultaholic or Wrestle Talk or something like that.
Shout
Like,
out
I'm
to
always
the
up to
other
date with stuff.
YouTube wrestling
Absolutely.
channels out there because we're following in your footsteps and you're
Yeah.
all great, to be honest.
Yeah, they all offer something different. It's really even stuff like WrestleLamia, who also does WrestleGamia, which is a really cool channel just dedicated to wrestling video games.
I do think the video game people in us should acknowledge that WWE 2K22 was
Yes.
finally teased last night in a trailer. And if there's graphics or anything to go by, I mean, it looks better.
Yeah. I mean, we only saw 2 people.
Yeah. So
And,
so it's exciting times. It's exciting times to be a wrestling fan, to be a gaming wrestling fan.
I'm really curious when it's going to come out because I've really got an itch to play a wrestling game. I don't want to install 2K20 again.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
No.
But anyway, let's talk some more about wrestling. So,
Let's.
what is your history, Luke, with wrestling? When did you start watching wrestling, if you can remember?
I don't remember. It's
Okay.
just kind of always been there, sort of thing.
And why do you think it's always been there? Is there a specific reason? Is there someone in your household who was watching
my parents used to watch it. I think my nan used to watch it.
Wow. Okay.
Like I can't remember. I think who was it? She said she was like. I can't remember. Yeah, can't remember. But yeah, no, it's always been there. Like my uncle likes wrestling. It's like cousins on both sides that did like wrestling or still do. It's just kind of it's like games. It's kind of always been there.
Yeah.
And even if I haven't been, because we went through a stage where we didn't have any of the like Sky channels or anything like that, where
where you
WWE
couldn't
was shown.
access it easily.
Yeah, I'd still play the games and keep up that way to a degree. How about you?
So for me, I remember many years ago, over 20 years ago now, the Sky Sports channels, which is what WWE was on at the time in the UK. They're obviously now on BT Sport. But the Sky Sports channels used to be available on Freeview. You could get them on Freeview boxes if you'd have like a top-up card. And so we used to have them, and I would just watch it with my brother. And I remember I did watch wrestling on and off before this, but where I really remember like distinctly starting to watch it on a weekly basis every single week was just before the WCW invasion angle.
Oh yeah.
That's where I really remember starting to watch.
Dude, I watched it before you then.
But I know that I did watch before that.
Oh, but I was fully into it before that.
But I
thought, yeah,
I just can't remember much before that. So
yeah,
I can remember like the odd Stone Cold kind of thing
yeah, sure.
and some of that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like, I would say it was somewhere between 98 and 2001 is where I started.
Mine was definitely before 98 because we were watching it in like where I originally lived, sort of thing, when I was like before I was 4, sort of thing.
Okay.
I don't think I'm trying to think of what the earliest thing I can remember is, but I can't off the top of my head. I've just got an Invasion on the top of my head now.
Yeah. I mean, the angle
no,
that should have been the best angle ever in wrestling, and it fell flat on its face.
Yeah, because I mean, all the good people didn't want to sign, because why would they? They had filthy money to sit at home and do bugger all.
Yeah, I mean, they made the right decision for them, right?
I absolutely wouldn't have signed. So.
Yeah, so I think, I do have some very early memories of certain wrestlers, and some of my favorite wrestlers of all time, actually. I was a big Stone Cold fan. I think he was one hell of a character. I think nobody can kind of surpass what he did in some ways. I was never. It's funny because up until around 2007, 2008, I actually was not a Triple H guy. I was not a Triple H fan.
Same. I wasn't. Mostly because of his horrible entrance music. I hated that shit. Until he got the game entrance music.
Yeah.
Like, that was really cool. But before that, I was just
Yeah. So I wasn't a huge Triple H fan. I always loved Chris Jericho, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Chris Jericho later. Chris Jericho I loved. There was another Chris who shall not be named that I also used to be a big fan of.
Shame. I mean, we Chris Benoit, we can name him because in ring, phenomenal. Outside of the ring, he's a horrible person.
We all know what happened there, and it's a tragic thing, really, what happened. And but before all that happened, when we didn't know he was a dick, I was a fan of his.
Same.
But outside of that, if I was to give you, off the top of my head right now, if I was to give you kind of my top 5 wrestlers of all time, and we will revisit this list in the future. I think we'll probably do like a top 10, and we'll actually think about it. But my top 5 off the top of my head, not in any particular order, but would be Edge, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Chris Jericho, and CM Punk.
Oh, I'll take 2 of those, CM Punk and Chris Jericho, absolutely. Depending on what mood I'm in, those 2 will flip-flop, but Jericho is the best ever.
It's Jericho's ability to reinvent himself and stay current, right? And every time you think he's past it, he proves you wrong. And I don't know how he does it. Because no disrespect to Chris Jericho, he can still put on a great match, but he's not as good in the ring as he was.
No, of course he's not. 20 years ago. Yeah, no, of course. He is he's still oddly incredible though.
Yeah,
he's still very, very good. He just knows, he's just not as quick or as agile as he used to be, sort of thing.
100%, 100%.
He is still very good.
I think the thing I remember most about Jericho, though, still to this day, is his debut. Like that.
Oh, it's fantastic.
That moment of him, him coming out and
I mean, it shows you how much they thought of him.
Yeah.
To put him straight out and talk smack, and the way he controlled the crowd. Yeah. I actually watched it the other day. Because I was on a bit of a Jericho tinge.
Yeah.
And I watched it the other day, and the way the fans are booing him, and he's just like, "Thank you," and it just keeps going. It's like, dude is masterful, absolutely incredible. I love Jericho. I love Jericho.
I think before you give a
some.
bit more of your favorite wrestlers list, I do think we should talk through mine a little bit
Yeah, absolutely.
and kind of explain why these people are my favorite wrestlers. Um, so obviously you look at people like Stone Cold, The Rock. They are what they are. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows what they are. Probably two of the best ever on the microphone. Uh, and
Yeah, I mean, you can say three if you throw Jericho in there as well, because
yeah,
Jericho's up
yeah.
there.
So I think those guys had
Oh,
that.
and Punk.
Those guys had that. Punk was incredible, but I'm gonna get to Punk.
Yeah.
So the first one I want to touch on that is on my list is Shawn Michaels. Because for me, the thing about Shawn Michaels is he was basically AJ Styles or Kenny Omega before there was an AJ Styles or Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He was the only one that seemed able to break that traditional Vince McMahon mold. And we all know what I mean by that.
Yeah, well, it's not even that he broke the mold, it's that he was different, but he still was able to fit into that world somehow. Like
Yeah.
while Bret Hart was technically incredible,
Yeah.
he wasn't a superstar. He was a wrestler. He wasn't a
Yeah.
superstar sort of thing.
And
He
the other
wasn't a
thing,
great,
I think
amazing
the
character
other
sort of
thing
thing.
that people forget is Shawn Michaels, went away from wrestling for 4 years.
Mm.
Like the guy disappeared for 4 years,
Yeah, he did.
came back, and everyone
He
went,
was he
can he
was
still do it? And he was
he was
probably better
better.
than ever.
Yeah, he was better. It was great.
And I remember that I because I kind of knew who Michaels was,
Mm.
but I didn't really know who he was because I hadn't encountered any of his
Sure,
earlier stuff at the time.
sure.
But my brother was a big fan, and my brother doesn't really watch anymore just because he doesn't have time. But he was a big fan of Michaels, and he said to me, like, when Michaels came out, I remember when Kevin Nash was like the new leader of the NWO and all that stuff, and Michaels
Oh,
came
that
out,
was bad.
and it was like my brother was like, he proper marked out. He
Mm.
marked out the same way that I marked out, even though I knew Lesnar was coming back all those years ago. I still marked out for it because we'll get on to Brock Lesnar. I do think Brock Lesnar, athlete-wise, is one of the best wrestlers ever, if he wants to be.
I genuinely think just in general he is.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
is the best big guy ever.
Um, so I'm sure we'll talk about Brock Lesnar later.
Sure.
But yeah, for Shawn Michaels, it was like, I remember my brother saying to me, like, this guy is one of the best wrestlers ever. And I looked at him and I was like,
Mm.
what are you talking about? How can this be one of the best wrestlers ever? Do you know what I mean? Like, that was me
Yeah.
in my little kid stage of what
Yeah,
the hell?
he's not
What the
this huge dude who's gonna like throw
um
someone over his head
and
sort of
then
thing.
I
Yeah.
distinctly remember the match for me since when he had his comeback, and the match was the Elimination Chamber match where he won the World
Yeah.
Championship.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this guy is, like, you can tell from that one match, because the thing about Michaels is not only is he a great athlete and he has that ability, he understands the psychology
Oh yeah,
of
absolutely.
wrestling. He
Absolutely.
knows how he has the fans in the palm of his hand.
Oh, speaking of, do you
Yeah.
remember when he trolled everyone with the Bret Hart thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that was incredible. Incredible. Yeah, that was
And it's so,
that was
yeah,
so tasty.
and then it's like, I do want to talk about Edge, because obviously at time of recording, Edge has got his Universal Championship match tonight. The Universal Championship is still a terrible name for the belt, but there we go.
Isn't even the thing, to be honest, but that's a different video we'll do.
It World Championship and WWE Championship just made so much more sense in terms of names if you want to have the two major belts. But that's another episode, as you say. But Edge, for me, it was that thing of Edge was the tag team wrestler, right? Like when I first started wrestling, like when I first started really watching wrestling, it was Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys, in those TLC matches, some of the greatest matches of all time. And then I remember when Edge and Christian first split up as a team, and they were, they were being rivals against each other. And I really wasn't a fan of Christian at the time, because I was just like, he just seemed, and it is, it proves he's good at his job. Me as a kid, it was just like, he just seems like a little bitch. But that was kind of the point, right?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, 100%. 100% was.
But it was kind of the thing that for me, Edge, I initially found quite boring when he first was a singles competitor, because it was like, you're a good wrestler, but I just find the character boring.
Yeah. He
You
didn't
don't
get
have
really good until he turned heel.
Yeah, and when he became the rated R superstar,
Mm.
in the kind of later, slightly before 2010, up until his retirement, really, in 2011. Because the thing is, he took that rated R superstar character and those traits, but he managed to tweak it where he could do it when he was heel or face.
Yeah.
And not many people can do that. And it became that he was such a little shit that people loved him for it, right? It was kind of like the Eddie Guerrero thing. I do want to shout out Eddie Guerrero, because he was a master.
Outstanding, yeah.
And yeah, for me it was Edge. With Edge, it was one of those things where, again, he had the wrestling ability. I think he grew into having the ability on the microphone as he got older, as he became that rated R.
Yeah, he
character.
was always able to be funny.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until that he really got into the character work, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure that we'll touch on Edge a little bit more as we kind of talk about things in the future. But Edge was one of those that when he retired, it genuinely brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah, same.
Like, it genuinely did, because it felt like he wasn't ready. And that's why I think him coming back isn't the same as these other older wrestlers coming back. He deserves to end it the way he wants to end it, right? Yeah. And it felt like he didn't have that. So
exact same thing with Brian.
Yeah,
literally the same thing.
So I'm sure we're going to talk about the Royal Rumble and stuff. And because you said you feel like Edge shouldn't have won the Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I agree or disagree. I'd have to hear your explanation as to why first. But I do think Edge deserves a run at that belt. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think he does. He has enough credit in the industry. He's also proved, not only does he have the name, he can still fucking wrestle. Like, he is still a great wrestler. And it's a shame that he lost 10 years to an injury that I watched one of the documentaries on the network, and he was saying that he didn't even contemplate ever coming back because he was just told he never would be able to.
Yeah.
So he said there is a chance that if he would have known and would have actually really considered it, I think in one of the documentaries he even said, like, I may have been able to come back 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it probably, like, Daniel Bryan probably has a lot to do with that, because it was similar things, like concussions, neck injuries.
Yeah, it was we're just going to tell you that you can't, and then we know what Daniel Bryan went through. He went to loads of different doctors by all accounts.
Oh yeah, dude,
to basically prove that he.
Yeah, by general doctors, he was cleared for ages, and if WWE didn't clear him, he would have gone to Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Very close to leaving.
100%. So yeah, for me, and I'll come back to CM Punk, because I know that CM Punk is probably one of your favorites as well.
Yes.
But I want to hear about some of your other favorites.
Okay. Some of my other favorites are not WWE guys.
Okay, interesting.
But there's a running theme with all of them. So Samoa Joe, for one.
Yeah.
Because he's.
So I was going to touch on these guys separately, but I
adore Samoa Joe. Part of me is gutted that he's only on commentary at the moment.
Did you see the report that it sounds like he has actually now been, as of kind of after WrestleMania at some point, he will be removed from commentary?
Yeah.
So it sounds like
I didn't see the removed from commentary, but I saw a bunch of things where he was saying that it is, he is still recovering and that WWE have been really patient. But also he's fucking good on commentary.
Yeah, he is.
Really
He is.
good. Like he's great. He's such a great talker.
It's
Like the
kind of
stuff
like how
between
CM Punk was good at commentary, right?
absolutely. Yeah, Samoa Joe.
And they've had some
Big
good
fan.
matches in the past. Jesus.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Their Ring of Honor match was insane.
Mm.
Kurt Angle.
Yeah, Kurt Angle's another one I would have brought up.
Kurt Angle absolutely is from, ironically,
He's just an
quite funny as
athletic
well.
machine, right?
Funnily, I think all round he is the best ever.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think all round, if you break each thing down,
Yeah.
it's a real toss up between him and Jericho.
It's
in
weird
my
because
head.
it's almost like one of those things, right? Where I look at Kurt Angle and I look at Brock Lesnar, and then I go, if Brock Lesnar had the mic ability Kurt Angle had, we would be talking about Brock Lesnar as the best ever.
Yeah, maybe, but Brock's a different beast, pun intended.
He literally is. Yeah.
The funny thing in my head is that because of interestingly, I stumbled upon TNA. Completely stumbled.
Okay.
I was watching because over here at the time it was on Bravo.
It was on one of those channels,
something like that. Or,
one of those
I think I was watching
channels. Let's call it.
I think it was like Takeshi's Castle or something like that.
Great program.
And like I went to get a drink and come back, and like TNA had started, and I was like, what the fuck? That's Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
Why is Kurt Angle randomly on my TV? Where does this come from?
So the funny thing was, I actually watched. Let's take a little tangent. We love tangents here. Sorry, people, but we do.
We do.
Let's take a little tangent into TNA because I watched TNA slightly before you actually. I was watching TNA slightly before Christian debuted. He was the first kind of big star.
Yeah, I think I was
because Angle
maybe
came in a
6
year
months
later,
to a
right?
year before Christian left.
Okay, yeah.
Because I didn't even know about it. I just completely stumbled on it.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where like instantly watching TNA, you saw some of their talent and went, they have better wrestlers here. Like they have better wrestlers. That was without question.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the production value. And, they didn't have that. But, you think about they had AJ Styles. They had people like Samoa Joe, Eric Young,
Christopher Daniels, Kazarian.
Yeah.
James Storm,
someone I think of who I really think is really underutilized in WWE currently, but is genuinely an amazing wrestler, is Robert Roode. Like,
yeah, I love Robert Roode.
Robert Roode is amazing. He's got the character stuff. He's got the right sort of athleticism where he can do some of the, he can do the dives and stuff like that, but he's strong enough to be able to lift the big guys as well if he needs to. And I think, yes, he's in a tag team with Ziggler right now, and it works because they're similar sort of characters and they play off each other. But man, should he just go back to NXT and be on his own?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if he'd ever be able to replicate his heel world champion run in TNA. That was that was incredible.
And this is the funny thing. The reason I wanted to take the aside into TNA is because I wanted to mention some of my favorite wrestlers from outside of WWE. And TNA, obviously, you think of TNA as someone who competed with WWE or tried to compete with WWE before AEW came around. But there was a while for me as a fan after getting into TNA, probably between kind of the mid 2000s, so like 2005, let's say, up until sort of 2009, I think it was, where Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff came in.
Yeah.
Like up until that happened, it was like, you are actually the better product. You're providing me the better product. You just don't necessarily have the production value. That was always how I felt.
Yeah, a lot of the stories they ran were hokey bullshit, but
They had gold in there though, right? They
Yeah, I mean, like
they
the
they
the
had
triple
real
threat
gold.
between Samoa Joe, AJ, and Daniels
Daniels, yeah,
is
yeah. And
absolute
and let's be
masterwork.
honest, any of their X Division stuff as well was
Absolutely,
like
yeah,
mental,
yeah,
absolutely mental.
absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know, and it's it's crazy because TNA is one of those companies that I genuinely think to myself, if they had the resources back then that AEW have now, how different might have things been? Because their issue was when Hogan and Bischoff came in, it wasn't that the the quality of the product went down eventually, but it didn't
Mm.
go down straight away. Their problem was they instantly went, "Oh, let's try and challenge WWE on Monday nights," and it's like that's
Well,
never gonna work.
yeah, it was that, and it became the Hulk Hogan show with all of Hogan's friends, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it it just got bad.
Um,
Got bad.
but yeah, no, some of my favorite wrestlers to watch were in TNA back in
Mm.
the day. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, AJ is another one we could easily talk about because he's
hmm
phenomenal.
he literally is.
Who else? Christian's one of my favorites. I
Yeah.
adore Christian. I think he's incredible.
I'm also so glad, you know, we've seen Christians now in AEW.
Mm.
Um, but I'm also just thinking about Christian's career. I'm glad that he stepped away from WWE
Oh
back
yeah,
in those mid
it did
2000s
wonders. Yeah, it did
because it's
wonders.
not even that. Christian was always great. Like
Yeah,
when you look back on it now, he was always great. It
yeah, he
shows
was.
that he was great.
Yeah.
But he lived in Edge's shadow. That was the problem, right? And he was
Well, I don't necessarily think it was that. It was just that Vince doesn't like him.
yeah, true,
Vince
true.
infamously wanted to put a blue dot over his face. Just absolutely
Yeah,
ridiculous. But
yeah,
then he went and became the NWA champion a bunch of times
yeah.
and
So,
became one of the best heels in wrestling at the time.
so Luke, who else
Mm.
have you got for us? You brought up Samoa Joe. We
Um,
know you've got Chris Jericho, CM Punk,
hmm.
and Kurt Angle. Who
I
else are
really
you
like
thinking?
Austin Aries.
Austin
Austin
Aries,
Aries is
okay.
awesome. I just love everything about him. I love the Brainbuster. It's such a great finisher.
Yeah,
I love his attitude because he's
yeah,
great and he knows he is.
yeah.
Um,
Where do you fall? So where do you fall on Kenny Omega?
um, I don't like what he's doing at the moment.
Is
I'm
that
not.
him or is that? Do you know what I mean?
I don't like the character at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I much preferred his New Japan stuff. Um,
It almost feels like he's slightly misused in AEW, right? Like
yeah.
it almost feels like they don't, even though he is the face of the company because he has the belt, it's almost like they don't really want him to be the face of the company, even though they know he should be.
Uh,
It's a bit of a weird one.
yeah, I'm not sure. Like I like him as a heel. I think he does. I mean, he works great both ways.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It's just that
To
I
be
don't,
honest,
it's
for
just something
me,
about this. It just feels like a
to,
rehash of his New
to,
Japan stuff.
to be honest, it wasn't even that. For me, it was the fact that the writing was on the wall for AEW so far misusing Kenny Omega. The second that they decided to not have Kenny Omega versus Jericho for that first world championship. Like
Oh,
that
I like that though.
I like it. I like it in the sense that they went in a direction that people didn't expect,
Mm.
but sometimes you should do the things that people expect.
I mean,
And
they did in the end. They put the title on Jericho,
yeah, that's
which
true.
is exactly what they should have done.
That's true.
Um, but I think the way they set out having Page in that just shows exactly what they are.
They're
They're
about
gonna
building
have
new stars, right?
yeah, they're about building new stars and giving people chances, but
but
they're
using the big
also
names when they need to.
yeah, but they're also smart. They're not stupid. They're not just gonna
Yeah.
hinge everything on
And you
someone
know,
no one knows.
I want to give Tony Khan a lot of props because I
Mm,
said it privately to you before. The guy does make mistakes,
of course,
but he listens when he does.
yeah,
Like
yes,
when he knows he's made the wrong call, and he's also very open, weirdly, about the behind the scenes stuff.
mm,
But I think it's because he knows that fans aren't stupid anymore. Like fans do
oh yeah,
know things.
yeah, yeah,
You know, it's not like it was even 20 years ago, where 20 years ago the majority of fans didn't know the inside
Mm.
baseball terms. The majority of fans didn't know what face or heel even meant.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now they do. And now they also know that, everything is predetermined, everything
Yeah.
is written and thought out and all that stuff. Like, fans actually enjoy knowing about the process, because them knowing this stuff doesn't take away from what they see. It
Mm.
actually adds to it.
Yeah.
And I think WWE have got better with that stuff, with
Yeah.
some of their documentaries and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
their documentaries are good.
but even then, I think sometimes they treat the fans almost like they don't know what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. It's also it's like the whole Charlotte Flair thing when it should have been Becky versus Ronda, but they
Yeah.
had to put Charlotte in there because, well, no, because this is what we want. It's like, it doesn't fucking matter what you want. Like, it's about the
And
fans.
don't get me wrong,
That's what we want.
I'm not one of these that thinks fans should always get what they want
Oh no, 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 absolutely not.
either. I do think there are times where you can purposely not give the fans what
Yeah,
they want. And it does work. Yeah, fans will get
like the whole
annoyed,
Kofi
but
Kingston thing. Like
if it
that
paid
worked because he kept getting chances taken away from him.
yeah,
Sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And yeah, it's just crazy. I don't
Mm.
know. The I do think AEW have made some missteps, and I think
Oh yeah,
they're not where they
their
should be
women's
right
division
now.
for one.
Yeah, yeah, for
Stupid.
sure. Um, and they're also, it's not even that. It's this weird thing of like, for all their building up of new stars,
Mm.
they almost don't put certain people on their programming enough.
Mm.
Like, because they want to give certain time to everybody, and because they want to be fair and build up everyone, which is a really good way of doing it, but it means that it's a little bit harder to get connected to certain characters
Yeah, and I mean that is
because you
kind of why
don't see
Dark
them
is a thing
enough.
as well,
Yeah.
because they like I think I've never watched Dark,
No, I
but
haven't. No.
it's not. It's like a supplemental show. It's not a secondary show. It's almost like an expansion
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah. For
Because you'll
sure.
get
And
like
it's
Moxley down on Dark occasionally.
yeah, and it's just one of those things though where it's like the only stars that you can really guarantee that are going to be on AEW on an almost weekly basis, and it's no disrespect to any of these people because I love all of them, but the only ones you can guarantee who are pretty much there on a weekly basis, unless they're not there because of a storyline reason,
Mm.
is someone like Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is basically on the show every single week.
Mm.
Cody's also a big enough star that he doesn't need to be on the show every week. Like, I would much rather see MJF in a match every single week.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do think MJF will be one of the biggest stars in wrestling if he isn't already.
Yeah, I was gonna say give it a year maybe because dude is incredible. He's only like 24. It's
Yeah,
disgusting.
yeah, I know. Um,
Disgusting how young he is.
so now I want to come back to CM Punk,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's a good idea to get CM Punk out the way in the first episode of this podcast. Because I think we could talk about him for ages.
Oh, gotcha.
Um,
100%.
so I'm going to give you my history with CM Punk in terms of how my opinion changed with him over time.
Okay.
I was always a fan of him as a wrestler,
Mm-hmm.
but I used to hate his character because it felt fake. It didn't feel, none of the characters he had up until his final run felt like it was actually him.
Mm-hmm.
So, his character when he debuted in ECW, and I think he even actually has said it since he left WWE that he was trying to be someone else
Yeah,
initially.
he was. He talked
Because
about like bulking up as well to be like the WWE version of himself.
yeah, and and when he, as time went, it's not that I wasn't ever a fan of him. I actually loved him. I did enjoy the straight edge society stuff.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. I love that.
But let's be real. the thing that makes CM Punk a guaranteed Hall of Famer, even if he never comes back to wrestling, is that final run, right? It's that Money in the Bank, the match at Money in the Bank with John
Um,
Cena, and that whole run that went from there.
I genuinely think, sure, yeah, absolutely, but I genuinely think the rest of his run's underrated. I think
Yeah, no, I agree. I
the
agree.
stuff he did with Jeff Hardy was incredible.
The Jeff Hardy stuff was amazing.
That
Yeah.
was awesome because then Jeff Hardy then left and went back to TNA for a
Mhm.
bit. Um, uh, the stuff with the Undertaker the first time was also incredible. Um,
Yeah.
I think he had a small
Punk's
interaction.
Punk's another one of those
Mm.
that can do everything. Like even in
Yeah,
terms of just his mic skill,
yeah,
he
yeah,
can do the funny stuff. He can do the
absolutely.
serious stuff. He can make the funny stuff serious,
Mm.
which is really odd.
Mm-hmm.
Um and but I think they made so many mistakes with Punk. Not,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and this is what I mean.
Hence why it got to the stage where he didn't sign
None
until like the night before.
and this is the thing, none of this stuff is on Punk himself. But
No.
even up to the end, like I understand why he walked away. Like I genuinely
Oh god,
do.
yeah.
I genuinely do believe what he believes. He
Mm.
should have been the very last match on a
Oh,
WrestleMania
because I mean,
card.
his match with Taker is the last good Undertaker match.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it,
And
well,
not
not
only
good,
that, but
but great.
literally, but this is the thing. We heard that the reports were that part of the reason he walked away that year wasn't even just about himself. It was because they weren't listening to the fans about Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
we heard that that was part of it, but it sounds like the original plan for that year, from what I can remember, was actually to have CM Punk go up against Triple H, and Punk was like, "I
Nope.
don't need a match with Triple H.
Nope.
He needs the match with me. I make him more relevant."
Mm.
And that's kind of true. No disrespect to Triple H, but at the time it was kind of true. Like, you know, Punk was still, even when he'd stepped back from being the world champion and stuff like that after that initial run with Cena and all that stuff, he was still the hottest thing in wrestling. Like, people wanted him to be the champion. They wanted him in the main event. You know, I still think they messed up. They messed up with Paul Heyman and CM Punk, right? And what they did there, for me, I get that they brought Lesnar in. He did the stuff with Lesnar, right? That should have gone the opposite way. What should have happened was Lesnar should have been the face in that rivalry. So
Okay.
so for me, Heyman and Punk should have stuck together, and they should have still been the heel team.
Mm.
The For me, it's not that the betrayal happened. That wasn't a mistake. That stuff should have happened, but they could have carried that out way longer. And
I think Heyman could have had his cake and eaten it too on that. I think he could have just had both
yeah,
and
yeah,
should have.
and this is the thing, is like, Punk to me is one of those things where it's like, as a fan, it feels like he has left some things undone. Like, it feels
Mm-hmm.
like he has, not that he has anything to prove, because he has nothing to prove
Mm-hmm.
to anybody, and he's walked away on his terms, and that's absolutely fine. But as a fan, it feels like some things were unfinished for him. Do you know what I mean? It feels like we need. He feels like one of those wrestlers that kind of deserves one more run.
Oh yeah.
He deserves that final run. One, to prove that it wasn't a fluke, because I think some people think it was a fluke. I've heard a lot of people say that if he came back now, he wouldn't really matter. And it's like, no, he would still
I
be.
mean, there's rumors every other week of him going to AEW.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there was an offer made and he turned it down.
Yeah, because they
Um
texted it to him.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
like he I can't remember what event he did, but he was talking about it, and he was like, there was, but texting someone is not the way. It's not
It's
like
not a
the right way
professional
to do
way,
that.
right? Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he was fully open to, because it was after his MMA stuff, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny
He was
because
open to it.
even here, I don't know Punk. I hope that if we get big enough one day, we'll get the chance to speak to him. That would be amazing. But but it it strikes me as quite interesting that he went from I'll never ever wrestle again to now I'll do it if the right opportunity is there. Do you know what I mean? Over the years since he left, since he walked away, it was I'll never ever do it again, don't even talk to me about it. To then he ended up being on that Fox WWE show for a while. And I think that maybe mended a couple of bridges with WWE, but not enough. Not enough.
Yeah.
And then I think when the AEW thing came around, it was like, oh, maybe there's an opportunity over here. Because a lot of what I've heard Punk say is like, I'll come back to wrestle, but I don't want to come back to wrestle the same people I've wrestled before.
I wonder if he ends up in New Japan.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, because Ospreay really wants that match.
Yeah, yeah.
He called him out again the other week when he won the that horrendous new title.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like, Ospreay makes it look okay, but it's still horrible.
Saying that, if he ends up in New Japan, that might be his way to AEW eventually. Do you know what I mean? They seem like they're trying to work on a working relationship.
I mean, they have one. Kenta showed up.
Yeah, that's true.
There
he
is.
Literally, yeah.
I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, there would be more there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Kenta showed up is a big deal.
But yeah, so for me, like, if I was to choose one wrestler to come back that I still think could do it and still would be on the top of their game, it would be CM Punk. And outside of that, not a lot of people would agree, but I'm going to explain the situation I'd want with this person for it to work. It would be Brock Lesnar, but I want Brock Lesnar as a wrestler, as someone who's there every week. Yeah, like he was in the early 2000s, even if it's just for a year. And again, he's someone who hasn't got a point to prove, but I would almost want it for him to prove the point to the fans that it's like, no, I am one of the best.
I don't think it's necessarily a thing that they don't think he is, sort of thing. It is just more they got tired of
because he just shows up, right?
Yeah. Like the whole Money in the Bank thing, that was so stupid. Even though it was funny as hell to see him dancing around with that briefcase.
Yeah, it was.
It was like, also, was it Ali? Yeah, it was Ali. It's like, you're a fucking idiot.
Just
you
grab
literally
it.
stood
You're
on top
right
of the ladder,
there.
just go, yep. Well, you're having fun coming down. I'm gonna fuck off with this. Like, so dumb.
But there is a sort of suspension of logic in wrestling, right? Sometimes where it's
well, yeah, like, he wasn't even in the match and he won the bloody thing.
Yeah.
So dumb.
I do think the Money in the Bank would actually be really interesting if it almost becomes like the hardcore title, where it's like you could literally where it's like if it was like you could literally not win it at any time, but if anybody could cash it in. So as long as you had the briefcase in your possession, I think they could do an interesting story there.
Maybe, but look how quick they ran the 24/7 title into the ground.
I know, but that was because of stupidity. That wasn't because it was.
And you really think they wouldn't do it with that? They absolutely would.
True. When the question for me is, I wonder when NXT gets their version of the Money in the Bank.
I don't think they need it.
Really? You don't think so?
Yeah, I really don't think so. In my world,
do you think there will ever be a Money in the Bank cash in?
I was going to say, in my world, NXT? There is one Money in the Bank match and one Money in the Bank briefcase.
And then you don't know who they're going to cash in on.
Yeah. So there'd be a men's, there'd be a women's, and there'd be a tag team one. Because they actually wanted to do a tag team one.
I actually do want to get rid of in a weird way. If they're going to stick to the traditional kind of... If they're not going to go down the route of anyone can cash in if it's in your possession, then whoever wins the match should be the person to cash it in. They should not lose it later. Do you know what I mean? They shouldn't lose it to somebody else. For example, Otis lost it to Miz. Such,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
That
Stuff
whole
like
thing
that.
was a clusterfuck. Like,
Stuff like that is kind of like, it just seems pointless because at that point, why not have Miz win the briefcase in the first place?
yeah.
It's really odd, and
Well, I mean,
I get that it's because in WWE plans change every single fucking hour. It sounds like,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
but yeah, I don't know. I want them. The old thing that they used to do that I want them to do again, that they just seem kind of dead set on, we're never going to do this again, is I want long form storytelling.
Yeah, 100%.
I want
100%. The only way that's coming back is if Heyman has any power.
Yeah, but I want,
Well, and Triple H probably, actually.
But I want a rivalry that goes a whole year, even if it does have to be sidelined because of injuries sometime, but then picked up later on. There are always ways to do that. They've proven it.
100%.
You know, one of the greatest rivalries I think ever was when Edge got injured and came back and then fought Jericho at WrestleMania. And they were tag team partners to start with. That was an amazing story because it was like, you know, it was just one of those things where it was like you use an injury that clearly affected the direction you were originally going to take with that team, but you played it off to your advantage. And to be fair, one thing that WWE do very well most of the time is a return. Like, they know how to do. Most of the time, they know
they
how
went
to
through a
do
bad
return.
patch of being like, "Hey, Batista's going to come back next week."
Yeah,
So
you
why
don't
the
need
fuck
to
would you
tell
tell
us.
us that?
Yeah, you don't need to tell
Oh,
us.
he arrived to tell us he's going to be in the Royal Rumble. How much cooler would it be if we didn't know?
Yeah. Because also, I feel like that's why the Batista thing had the reaction it did. Because
Yeah,
people,
I think it would have been way different if they didn't know.
Because once he was announced, everyone was like, "Okay, he's fucking winning." If nobody knew and he just showed up, people would have marked out for him winning. That would have been amazing. That would have been one of the biggest moments, because people love when a return wins the Royal Rumble. But I'm sure that we will talk about Royal Rumbles in the future on this show, because I think one of our topics at some point will probably be our favorite Rumble matches. So staying away from Rumble matches, though, I do think we should talk about some of our favorite wrestling matches ever.
I was going to go there, actually. I was absolutely going to go there. Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne.
That was an amazing match.
It's incredible. Tyler Bate versus
Not where
Walter.
I expected us to start, but
I love Tyler Bate, and again, 24, disgusting. He is so good. Everything he does at that age.
Isn't it funny though how that match kind of proved that it's not always the match you expect to be the best match that is the best match. Nobody expected, like, with no disrespect to the two wrestlers, because they are great, both of them. I love them both. But no one expected that to be as good of a match as it was.
I mean, they were probably expecting it to be good because, we know they're both very good. But on the show, like, it was such a stacked show anyway.
Yeah. And I think it's just one of those things. It's almost like I think of a match, I was telling you about yesterday, where a more recent match, where Cody fought his brother in AEW, on one of their pay-per-views. I forget which one because there are so many pay-per-views.
That was not All In. It was the one after that.
Yeah.
Double or Nothing.
And
was it Double or Nothing?
Was it? I can't remember.
I'll
Someone, if you know, remind us in the comments.
I mean, I'm Googling it.
When did Cody fight Dustin? But for me,
yeah, Double or Nothing.
Okay. But for me, that was one of the best matches I've ever watched, and it wasn't necessarily because of the wrestling itself.
Yeah, it was the story.
It was the story that was being told outside and inside the ring. and then how that match ended with the I need my brother, I need a partner thing. That was really fucking
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this is one thing that AEW have over WWE at the moment. And it's because Tony Khan gets it. They know how to do long form storytelling. They will do something next week that you think doesn't matter, and they'll bring it up 8 months down the
Yeah, I
line.
mean, look at like the Pinnacle.
Yeah.
Like they were teasing that for a very long time. With loads of there's loads of little things here and there that MJF was doing, or
Yeah.
Dax and Harwood were doing, kind of things that, and like they looked like they were two completely separate things, because it looked like there was going to be a four horseman type thing over here, and MJF was going to do his thing, and it was like, nope, one in the same, bitch.
Yeah.
All good. One of my absolute favorite matches ever, though, is two of my favorite evers. Cesaro, Sami Zayn.
Okay, yeah,
Because that was
yeah.
fantastic. And Cesaro, William Regal, because that was incredible. I
Do
love William
you know
Regal.
what? I
He's one of my
don't
favorites.
actually remember that match.
Oh, dude. Cesaro, William Regal is fantastic. I actually really like Regal and that's Chris Hero. What was he called? Cassius Ohno.
Yeah, Cassius
I
Ohno,
love
yeah.
Cassius Ohno when in his original NXT run. He was awesome.
Yeah.
So good. He's such a good character. Fantastic.
Isn't it funny? Credit to WWE where it's due. They took NXT from a silly little game show that replaced ECW to one of the best shows in wrestling.
Well, for a good while, it was the best thing in wrestling.
Yeah.
It had the best stories. Ciampa versus Gargano, the Undisputed Era stuff. Andrade, Aleister Black, Velveteen Dream, who was falling off the face of the earth. So many good things. Like everything good about WWE today can be traced back to something in NXT.
Yeah, and then
whether it's Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens,
90% of the time they mess up the call-ups to the main roster.
They actually don't.
You don't think so?
They mess up. They'll mess up aspects, but it's not actually all that often they completely mess up.
I think the only one they completely got right though was Finn Balor, right?
No.
Do you not think so?
Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, they fucked up towards the end. Roman Reigns is fantastic. Most of the women that come up are great.
Outside of the Shield, because
Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn.
I agree with the Shield thing. The Kevin Owens thing, I think, worked because he was still on NXT while also being on the main roster.
But even after he left, he was fantastic.
True. But then I look at things like Nakamura or Keith Lee or
I don't know what they're doing with Keith Lee
or others, and it's
some of them are out of desperation that they shouldn't have come up when they Ricochet.
Some of them
is the absolute call up worst.
Too quick, right? Yeah.
Ricochet and like Andrade was okay for a bit, like when he had the US title and stuff like that.
Do you know what?
Aleister
I think
Black?
the thing is? I think the problem is they backed themselves into a corner because by making NXT so good, there's this feeling from the fans that if you're NXT champion, you should automatically, if you lose the belt and then get a call up, you should automatically be in that top picture straight away. And not everybody is. I don't know if I agree or disagree. There are a lot of times
I disagree
where
because I don't. Even though I would love to see Bobby Roode as like a world champion, I don't think he should be. I think that like upper mid card or tag team is perfect for him.
But I think, for example, for a little while, not now, but when he first got called up after returning, Drew McIntyre, I do think they messed it up with him. He should not have. As someone who had already been in the company, I don't think he should have been called up as essentially a bodyguard to start with.
No, but it was kind of the way they actually wanted to do Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. They put him with
They were trying to
Ziggler and
recreate the Diesel and Shawn Michaels
yeah,
thing, right?
but then have because Ziggler is some kind of gateway between NXT and like main roster stuff.
That's because Ziggler's great. If we're being honest,
Yeah,
like he is a
yeah,
great in ring performer.
yeah, yeah. Even if he is a bit tired by this point, but the tag team with Root is great, perfect. But yeah, that made sense to me. I was okay with that because it's just true. I don't. I think Aleister Black has had it the worst because at least Ricochet is getting on TV.
Yeah,
Aleister Black, as soon as Paul Heyman left, he was done so dirty. Because Aleister
yeah,
Black could be incredible. Like he
yeah,
wanted to go back to NXT and they wouldn't let him. So
yeah,
dumb.
yeah. It's odd. This is the thing. This is the thing. Is like, I don't want to be too critical of WWE, but it's like every now and again they do stumble onto gold. But that's the problem, is it feels like they always stumble onto gold. It feels like they never actually mean it. It feels like they never actually intended for the gold to happen.
But that's also a good thing because that's why Daniel Bryan got so big, is because it was organic.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can
But no, but
match
for
like
example,
like what they did with Seth
with
Rollins.
Roman Reigns, right? And I actually really like Reigns, but they made a significant mistake of trying to basically force him down people's throats because everyone saw that no one actually disliked him. No
No, he
one
just got fed up
actually
with it.
disliked him. They just disliked the way he was being used.
Yeah.
If he was allowed to, I think the problem with Reigns was they saw how good he was and they went, he needs to be big now. And so he's going to be big straight away. It needed to be a more organic thing. Every other member of the Shield or anywhere else, really, like, you think of every wrestler that actually becomes one of the biggest names in the industry, and it all happens organically. You look at John Cena, I do think John Cena deserves a shout out as one of the best of all time because he's a much better wrestler than people give him credit for one.
He is towards his later years, yeah.
And also he's just incredible on the mic when he wants to be. Like especially some of his early stuff, before the C Nation stuff and all that. Like the Dr. Thugonomics Cena is genuinely great.
I never really got behind Cena because I like I said, some of my favorites are like William Regal, Cesaro, Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
I
you like the technical guys, right?
Yeah, I'm a submission dude. Like if I'm a wrestler, my finisher is a submission of some kind, or like a submission, a strike, or something like that. So like
That's
Daniel
fair.
Bryan's that perfect mix. And I just didn't like. I think his best work was with someone like CM Punk or Daniel Bryan or someone like that.
I think
so much of the time I just didn't care about what he was like when he was doing Laurinaitis stuff or whatever.
Yeah, but I think even back to the early days, right? One of the first storylines that I really remember with Cena was his very early rivalry with the Big Show, where he went on to win the US title,
and it made it hideous.
And it's like he may have done that, but the thing was his work during that, like he can like, we say that sometimes maybe he needs to be carried by others in the ring, but he can carry a rivalry. Like he knows
he's a very good character, and I think his heel turn was actually very clever.
Yeah.
In that, to turn heel, he just didn't turn heel, and people just started booing him. It's like, well, that is a heel. People didn't like him. That is a heel.
But they also, but you could also say that was a mistake. I understand why business-wise they never wanted Cena to be a heel,
which is dumb.
But making him a heel would have made him a bigger star. Right? And I think you think of something like the NWO back in the day. Yeah. They were literally the biggest thing in wrestling for a few years.
Yeah.
You know, so
So I mean, all of the biggest guys ever have also been very good heels. You look
yeah.
at Rock, you look at Triple H, you look at Steve Austin, Taker. Well,
Isn't
no,
it
Taker
funny
was good.
though? Isn't it funny though how Rock's best heel run was when he was halfway out the door. It was when he was
I mean, his
Hollywood
best
Rock.
run in general was when he was a heel. Yeah,
when he was halfway out the door and he was
absolutely.
Hollywood Rock. That was
Yeah,
basically his best run.
that was awesome. Yeah.
Uh, and then I always remember, Goldberg coming in and absolutely spearing The Rock right out of his boots. Like, The Rock knew how to sell a finisher, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The funny thing about Rock is if he wanted to, if he had the desire, I have no doubt that he could still wrestle. I think it's there. And he's always going to have that mic skill.
Yeah, he's always going to have the charisma. I don't know if he'd be able to do it full time.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's like Kurt Angle said. Like he felt fine until he stopped. And then tried to get back in.
Stop and start doing
he
it
stopped
again.
And then tried doing that Shield match, and it was so difficult for him.
Yeah. And then that Survivor Series, I was actually there for that. The Survivor Series match that went on to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually at Survivor Series that year, and it was weird because it's Kurt Angle. I know that 2 years ago he was still a great wrestler, and it was, and like you say, it was almost like because he took that little bit of a break, it was almost like he just couldn't quite get his body back into it. He couldn't quite do it, and that's no disrespect to him.
That's literally what he said. He said it was so difficult, and he just couldn't get a rhythm back because he stopped.
Yeah,
he was fine when he kept going. Like he wrestled Brock Lesnar with a broken neck.
Yeah.
Like
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Did you know?
Go on.
When that was going on, the original plan was, well, not the original plan, but the plan was to have him drop the belt to Lesnar, and then it would have been Lesnar versus Benoit at Mania.
Wow, really? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But I can't remember if it was Stone Cold or Triple H that talked Angle into like sticking with it, because he was just going to go off and get surgery.
I do remember that one year very early on, because WWE, of course, signed Sting eventually, but they almost signed Sting on 2 previous occasions, and not every fan would know this, but the first time that they signed Sting almost was not long after the WCW takeover. I think it was like the WrestleMania following that takeover. And I think the plan, it must have been close because they actually had a storyline plan, and Angle was going to be Sting's first Mania match for the company. And then obviously that didn't happen, and I can't remember who he went on to wrestle that year. But I remember him bringing up that because he said, although that match didn't happen, whatever match he had that year, I think I remember him saying it was like one of his favorite matches that he went on to have, which is interesting. But it's funny because talking about our favorite wrestlers, it's funny how similar we are to a certain degree in the style of wrestler we like. We like the all-rounder, really, right? That's who we are.
I mean, like, I would honestly say that Cesaro is easily top 3 at the moment for me, in WWE at least. And while he's not fantastic on the mic, it is just everything else he does. He is like perfect in every other way.
Not every single wrestler needs to be fantastic on the mic.
No, absolutely.
This is a huge misconception.
Absolutely.
Somebody like I think of someone like Umaga. Back in the day,
great.
Rest in peace. But he was genuinely an amazing wrestler. Like, genuinely amazing.
Yeah,
he never needed to speak. He could have not even had a manager and it still would have worked.
Yeah.
Because he was that good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to talk about a couple of my favorite matches
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
there is one that sticks in my mind as, for me, top 3 matches of all time,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the first Shawn Michaels Undertaker. Remember when they had the back-to-back Mania matches?
Mm-hmm.
The first one of those, I think, is one of the best matches of all
The
time.
first one is better. The second one's better narrative wise.
Yeah,
But yeah, the first one is a
but
better
I
match.
think the reason the first one was great was because you genuinely. I've watched that match several times since, and even though I know who wins, I
Oh yeah,
still
yeah,
feel like I don't know who's gonna win
yeah,
when I'm watching it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it was one of those things where Taker got to the point where no one actually wanted him to lose at Mania.
Mm.
But in those 2 matches, I think everyone kind of wanted him to lose.
Do you did you ever hear who was meant to originally break the streak?
No, go on.
Mark Henry.
What? That was
Yeah.
the original idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it was Edge. Edge was meant to break it, and Edge was just like, no.
I know, yeah, so I know that when Edge, that was the world title match they had at Mania, right?
Yeah,
And
Edge was
and I
supposed to win.
and I think that Taker, I remember hearing, I think that Taker actually gave his blessing for Edge to win.
Yeah, yeah,
And Edge was
yeah,
like, I don't want to take that. I don't
yeah,
want to take that responsibility.
yeah.
Um, but it also made sense for Lesnar to take it, right?
To a
In a
degree.
way. In a way, because Lesnar was the one where it's like, Lesnar can take this heat because it doesn't really fucking matter.
Honestly, flip it around a bit,
Go on.
make it a little bit different. If so, if it was Roman Reigns and he came out and did "This is my yard now," and that was the beginning of Tribal Chief,
Yeah, yeah.
that would have been far more worth it.
Yeah, that's true. That's the thing, is the Lesnar taking it kind of felt inconsequential to the overall progress of it. As a fan,
Yeah, it was just kind of the
I
shock of it actually
I
happening.
I always felt like I actually do think, if it was anyone who Taker has faced, I think it should have been Shawn. I think Shawn should have taken it, but that's because it made sense story-wise. In terms of their overall rivalry over their careers, it kind of felt like the one that made sense. Taker being the guy who injured Shawn and took arguably a few years of his career away and stuff like that. And it's like, they had so much history. I feel like what should have happened is what they did, and then have that Hell in the Cell match with Triple H where Shawn was the referee, have that lead to a third Shawn match and have him win. Like, to me, that's kind of what should have happened. I understand why it didn't, but if you
Yeah,
were
no, I'm good with how it was, to be honest.
but if you were gonna go with anyone who he's actually wrestled, I think at Mania, I think Shawn would have made the most sense.
I think Kane would make a lot of sense, but their matches are always terrible.
Yeah.
Their matches
And then
suck.
the other way of doing it for me is you do it like you said with someone like Roman Reigns, but you do it to further the character or
Mm,
something that you want to do with the character.
yeah.
Whereas with Lesnar, it was like, what? Like, it was literally shock.
Mm.
It was absolute shock.
Yeah, and it was one of those.
'Cause-
It still makes sense. Like you listen to Paul Heyman talk about it. It's like, for real though, who really could have done it? Like,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, sure.
it makes sense in that kind of like, if you're trying to make wrestling more legitimate, then
Yeah.
yes, it makes sense. But by the logic of making wrestling more legitimate, you then can't ever have a tiny little guy beat someone who's, 6'10" or whatever
Not true.
in a fight necessarily.
No, not true. Not true. Not true. True.
Um.
For sure.
So yeah, I don't know. Like, going back to the Shawn Taker matches though,
Mm.
those they like you said, both of those matches are great for very different reasons. I think that the second match had the story because The reason you didn't know who was going to win in that match is because it didn't feel like it was time for Shawn to retire, because he still had it, right? He still had it. He still was one of the best. And I remember Shawn Michaels actually saying that after that match, they asked him, "Are you sure?" So there was going to be an option for him to keep going if he chose to do that. And obviously he did come back for one match in the end.
No, he didn't.
that match
No, it doesn't
is
count.
wiped
That's not
from
canon. Doesn't count.
It's not canon. But do you know what? That is a shame. That match I want to bring up because it's a shame. Because even in that match, Shawn still had it. The problem was he ended up having to carry it because Triple H got injured.
Well, everyone did. They all got injured. It was stupid.
And it was just like,
so dumb. So the
You know
only good
what?
thing that came out of those events is that Royal Rumble title, because that was actually really pretty.
Yeah.
You haven't
that's
seen
true.
it since.
No, that's true. Do you know what though? If I could make one dream match, and I'm going to ask you this same question as well.
Ooh.
If I could make one dream match based on some of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and if I could take these wrestlers in their absolute prime, okay,
Yeah,
and put it together,
Ooh.
it would be Shawn Michaels versus AJ Styles.
That'd be dope. That'd be dope. Mine I already saw. Actually, a couple of them I already actually saw. It was like Samoa Joe versus Angle, AJ versus Angle, but phenomenal matches.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll tell you what, that whole Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle storyline in TNA, my God, that was great.
Samoa Joe is what Goldberg wishes he could be.
That's a little bit.
Dude, Goldberg sucks.
I love Goldberg.
I like Goldberg in that turn up, spear someone, and that's it. Anything longer than 5 minutes, he's done.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
He cannot it's a cool spectacle, and I really like the last run he had with Brock.
I was going to say
one was terrible.
But what I was going to say is that first match with Brock in his comeback when he was, at Survivor Series, that match really cool. Was amazing because it was a shock.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh shit.
I like that because of the way that Paul Heyman described it. It's he's the last gunslinger, like on his way out, sort of thing. He's fighting.
Yeah. But that's kind of where it should have ended, right?
100%.
It should have been. It should have been that one last match. Fair enough. Give him the win.
In terms of
and absolutely destroy him and have it be over.
In terms of dream matches that we didn't get, Kurt Angle versus Daniel Bryan, both in their peak.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic. I don't think we've hit peak Cesaro yet. It feels like they're building him for something.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But whatever peak Cesaro looks like versus peak Angle would have been, that would have been fantastic. I want, and I will pay all the money, I want Walter versus Cesaro.
Oh my God.
Because that would be a bastard of a hitty boy.
So here's a question for you. I got loads. Here's a question for you. Now that Edge has obviously had a comeback, it seems like he will be around for a while. I think
he's got a 3-year contract.
If he hadn't have got injured last year, I think he actually would have been one of these wrestlers who wasn't just showing up for SummerSlam or whatever. I think he would have been there as much as he could. What do you think there are any dream matches we could have with him that we haven't had yet, or dream rivalries? That would kind of help him, but also potentially really propel someone as well. Because he has that power, right? Because he is the star.
My head immediately goes to Adam Cole.
Okay.
Because I think they could do some really. I mean, Adam Cole is Adam Cole.
Well, apparently, so I did hear, and I don't know how true this is. I heard that when Edge originally was agreeing to a comeback, one of his things he said was he wants to work in NXT.
Yeah, I heard that.
And he wants to work with that talent, so that would be interesting. It does make me wonder though. I want to go back to AEW for a second because I think it's important to Edge's story. I wonder whether the reason that Edge is back in WWE is because he could have been in AEW if WWE hadn't sort of gone,
He
oh yeah,
almost signed a contract.
but this is what I mean. So do you think it was a thing? Do you
Yes.
think there was like a moment in WWE's head of like,
100%.
he's too big to let him go
100%.
there because that will really matter?
It was the same thing as Daniel Bryan.
So
It was the same thing. The second it was like, well, I'm okay to wrestle. It's just WWE won't let me. When that
yeah,
started happening, it was like, I can wrestle everywhere else. So,
yeah.
oh, so
But
Ring
yeah,
of Honor thing.
but even Christian ended up being the same thing, right? Like they didn't
People
let
were so
Christian.
mad out backstage with that. They were
Well,
so angry because the WWE dropped the ball and let
yeah,
him go.
but this is what I mean. There's it's silly because it's like Christian got writ off because of concussions. I get that. I get that. But even with concussions, I would assume I'm no medical expert,
Mm.
but I would assume that over time things can heal, and you would
Sure.
then be back
I
into a
mean, he was away
place.
for like 7 years.
Yeah, and Christian was away for many years. He never got his match with Big E, which is what should have happened. That should have been a WrestleMania thing.
Mm.
After the Rumble, there should have been a I am back for one more match. He should have played off the one more match thing, and it should have been one more match, and he should have finally had that match with Big E, and Big E should have gone over. That's what should have happened.
Mm-hmm.
He proved he could do it in the Rumble. This year's Rumble was a great match.
I
Like,
lost my mind when Christian showed up.
yeah, I know.
More so than Edge, because I was like, Edge is probably going to win. I don't want that. But then Christian showed up. I was like,
Why?
yeah.
So here's my question: why, as a fan, did you not want Edge to win? Because do you not? Is it because you feel like he shouldn't be at the top of the card?
No.
Or is it because you feel like he doesn't need to win it?
Neither. No, neither of those. It was just he hadn't earned it for me. I think when you've got someone like Daniel Bryan, who's never won a Royal Rumble,
yeah,
and it could be his last Royal Rumble,
that's
which
true.
they were playing.
That's
Better
true.
candidate. I think Big E was a better candidate. I think Cesaro, Nakamura were better candidates.
Do you know what I think would have been interesting?
Mm.
Is if they did the storyline that they've done with Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns, and Edge, but have Daniel Bryan be the Rumble winner instead. So almost flip the story where Edge becomes the ultimate opportunist and kind of forces himself into that, whether it be because he gets eliminated last by Daniel Bryan or whatever. But I also think that the one thing I would change about how this year's Rumble was booked, just kind of from a nostalgic standpoint, but also from a storytelling standpoint, because I think it would have been cool if you want to go down the route of Edge winning, is it should have ended up Edge and Christian. Like, it should have been, you know, those two. One of us is going to get our final opportunity, kind of thing.
I don't think so, because I don't think anyone realistically would have expected Christian to win anyway. I think the way they did it, like the second Randy went out, is like, cool, he's going to come back later.
Yeah, but that was so obvious, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, it was. And it always seemed like he was going to come back and cost Edge it, and then maybe Bryan goes over, Cesaro goes over, whoever.
Yeah, but you know what? I give them credit. I want to give them a lot of credit for the Rumble, because that was the one show that I was so worried about it not having a crowd, and it didn't really matter. They somehow made it not matter.
Yeah, it did. It did suck, because when Christian Surprise comes back out,
He
like that would have been
a huge.
that would have been massive. Yeah.
I'll tell you what though. Edge's reaction from the year prior when he came back, that reaction was probably one of the loudest I ever heard.
Yeah, it would have been the same for Christian as well, because people adore that guy.
Yeah,
That's why he's fantastic. Love
how funny would it be in some ideal world where maybe in the future AEW and WWE really, really do work together, and Edge and Christian are both world champions of those companies?
I don't expect Christian's going to be world champion.
You don't think so?
No, I think he'll be TNT champion.
Okay,
but I don't expect him to be world champion at all.
No, but do you think he'll ever be in that picture? Do you not think he's the next challenger to Omega?
I think he'll be like upper mid card. So yeah, he could pop in for a challenge and look good doing it. But I don't think he'll ever be.
Do you know what was quite funny about his whole debut? And maybe it is because of me as a TNA guy. the second that countdown started, before the name even came on the screen, I was like, "It's Christian." I can hear the music. Like that
I
is
mean,
that
I
is
love that music for one, but like the second they're like Hall of Fame caliber as Christian,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's cool.
I mean,
It's
if do you
obvious.
know what though?
People are like, oh, it's CM Punk. Oh, it's not CM
They
Punk.
literally told you pretty much that it wasn't going to be Punk, because they said to you it's not who you expect it to be, and
I
everyone
mean,
expects Punk.
it was who I expected it to be.
Yeah,
I expected it to be Christian.
I did think for a little while. I did wonder whether it might have ended up being Rob Van Dam. Before we knew, like when I was speculating in my head,
All right,
I,
okay.
I was like, Van Dam's gone from TNA. We don't really know what
Well,
he's doing
I don't know if he can wrestle anymore.
because of his sight and stuff.
Yeah,
Because that's why he's not allowed in WWE, right?
yeah,
Because they, yeah,
yeah, yeah, because he's legit going blind,
yeah.
or it
He's
could be
now
in
in the
worst
Hall of
case.
Fame, though. Congratulations to Rob
Yeah,
Van Dam and all
yeah,
the other people who are in the Hall of Fame.
he was great,
Uh,
but he fucked his own career up. Dummy,
yeah.
dummy. That was a shame.
I'll
He
tell
could
you
have been a
what,
great
though.
world
I'll tell you
champion.
what. If you haven't heard his Hall of Fame speech, though, I
Oh,
really recommend it.
I never watched the Hall of Fame.
Because I don't, but I heard his speech,
Oh, okay.
and it's one of the most like endearing things to the fans that
Mm.
I've ever heard in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, great speech. Congratulations to all those people. It's really weird that Titus O'Neil is in the Hall of Fame because of the Warrior Award.
Yeah, but that's fully justified because
But it
all the
is
charity
justified
work he
because
does.
of what he does.
It's more
He's an
justified than
amazing
William
guy.
fucking Shatner. Like
um,
he showed up once in
yeah,
WCW.
yeah.
Awesome.
Do you know what? Titus is one of those wrestlers, and underrated wrestlers is another conversation for another day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But Titus is one of those wrestlers who, oh my god, he should be such a bigger star.
Nah,
Like, he really should.
nah.
He
I
really.
think his tag team with Darren Young was fantastic. I think they should never have split that up.
Yeah.
But nah,
Don't you think so?
nah,
Interesting.
nah.
I think he could do a mid card job. I think he could do a mid card job, man.
I really don't. I don't see anything in Titus beyond
Here's a question
like
for you then,
he's a
because
bit of a heater sort of thing.
this is one that would be hard to put a whole episode on, but I think is an interesting
Mm-hmm.
question as kind of our final topic of discussion
Yep,
for
yep, yep,
today.
yep.
Who do you think, who is a wrestler that you thought wasn't that great, and then they had a character change or a specific storyline where you went, "Oh, I was wrong." Has there ever been that for you? Has there ever been that moment where you're like,
I've
oh,
had ones where I don't like their character, but I like because I tend to
but
judge
you see
first
something,
on
right?
yeah, I tend to judge first on like what they're actually capable of in ring. Like
Mm-hmm.
again, that's why I like Cesaro so much, Rusev and people like that. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to think on that. Do
Interesting.
you have one?
Yeah, so I do actually. And mine is a recent one, believe it or not. And over time, I became a lot more keen on this person. But this is because I didn't know a lot. I knew this person by name, but I didn't really. I'd never really seen any of their wrestling outside of WWE beforehand, and it is Kevin Owens. So when Owens
All
first
right.
came in, I liked how he came in, but I was like, I don't know if this guy is a good wrestler. Like in my head to start with, I was like, I don't know. And then where a switch went off for me, really, with Owens, was I came to the conclusion after his first couple of rivalries in NXT. It was like, okay, he can wrestle, but now I need to see what he can do character wise. And then it was when he got to the main roster and when he got paired with the great Chris Jericho.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
And then a light bulb went off in my head of, oh my god, this guy is like.
So one thing I really miss, I love Kevin Owens. I love him as a face. I think he's great. He's better as a
I
heel.
love him as either, to be honest.
He's better as a heel.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I think I miss about him being heel is when he's just mouthing off, or
Mhm.
like when he takes a hit and he's like, "Ow!" and like he's just chatting shit.
Is
It's
it
funny as hell.
is it just me
Mm.
who loves Sami Zayn right now?
No, I
Like-
adore Sami Zayn.
Like
So this is
every
my thing with
single
Sami
thing that
Zayn.
he's doing.
I adore Sami Zayn. I genuinely think he should be the next Money in the Bank holder.
Like they literally made him into a dancing gif from the other week. You know, like there's a.
Did you see his Instagram post about that?
No, I didn't. No.
It was great. He span it into the character.
Oh,
It was
really?
fantastic.
Wow.
He said something like, "Oh, it's come to my attention that WWE have made a gif of me dancing to take away from like what was actually being spoken about and stuff like that, and trying to make him look like a fool and stuff." I'm going like keep going with the whole WWE conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I always wanted to see Sammy as a heel to see what he could do, because I'm
Yeah.
always curious to see if they play both.
But is he one that you didn't necessarily expect could do
I
it?
didn't expect him to be as good. I expected like what's going on with Johnny Gargano at the minute. Like
Okay,
Gargano is a
interesting.
fantastic face. He's okay as a heel, but it's just not working for me.
Yeah.
Zayn
Zayn's heel run has made
is-
me realize he
he's-
could be a real top star.
Well, not could, should be.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
should be.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. Should
a lot of
be
the
is a better
reason
way
he
of
maybe
putting it.
hasn't had the Money in the Bank briefcase before is because it does work better on a heel.
Mhm. Maybe now is the time, right?
Yeah,
He does.
I think he's
the
great
thing about
style.
the thing about Zayn is he does the cowardly heel so well.
He does it fantastically. Yeah,
He does it
he does
so well to
incredibly
the
well.
point where I actually think I'm going to say that off the top of my head, he does it better than anybody ever. There's no one that springs to mind as for the cowardly heel specifically, not for I can name better heels.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for the
He
cowardly
definitely does it
heel,
incredibly well. Yeah, he's the
Jericho
only person.
may be the only one who I've seen do the cowardly heel.
I mean, that's the
just
thing
as
with
well.
Jericho. Like, he's done so many different kinds of heel. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Do you
hard to
know?
pinpoint
Did
what
you
he does.
hear? Did you hear
Yes,
recently?
I know it. Yeah, I know we're going. He only won the world title as a heel.
Yeah,
Which is bizarre.
but also it's like he only won it as a heel, but he was told he was going to win it as a face in the last run with WWE, and then it just didn't come off.
That's so shit.
Yeah, that
should have.
That whole storyline should have been for the world
Absolutely.
title, right?
The festival friendship was fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But no, Sami Zayn, I really struggle with, because I'm like, I'd love to see him as a face again and have Kevin Owens as the heel. But Sami Zayn, he's so good as the heel.
Yeah.
So good.
My question is, because Sami is the cowardly heel, where do you go with him? What do you outside
Money in
of
the Bank?
Yeah, no, I know that you go to Money in the Bank, but you have to get to Money in the Bank first, right? So
it feels like he needs a here. It feels like he needs an Omos or someone like that to like cower behind or something like that.
Yeah.
I
mean,
I
Omos
don't know.
is a monster, to be fair.
Omos is great. I like Omos. He's
he's genuinely great.
When he was no selling all that stuff with the New Day, it was
yeah.
awesome.
So you would have all seen WrestleMania by now, but Omos and AJ Styles are the tag team champions at time of recording release. They may have lost the belts on Raw for all we know.
Maybe. I'm actually going to watch that one. I'm going to watch that Raw, because Raw after Mania
is always one of the best,
and especially this one. Now they might have a crowd in the Raw. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But the Raw after this Mania, with Jericho being on as well, like.
But Omos is like, it's funny because he did some really simple stuff in the match, but he did it so effectively.
It was less what he did, it was how he did it, and his aura and his attitude and stuff like that.
And also the New Day, I'll tell you what, props to Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, because they sold the actual fear of Omos.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, they looked like they were petrified.
Genuinely, Xavier Woods is one of the most underrated talents ever. I genuinely think in the right at the right time, he could be world champion.
Yeah.
Because he is
In the right
fantastic. He
circumstances.
is strong. He is fast. He's got a good look. He's not ugly by any stretch of the imagination. He's got an incredible moveset. He's charismatic as all hell, and he makes money.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's great. I would love to see him. I remember his debut in TNA with
I still,
Archery.
in my head, I still think that I get that they split the New Day because of the draft. I still think that was a mistake. I still think somebody should have gone heel out of that team.
No.
You
No,
don't think so? You don't
absolutely
think
not.
they should have split them with
No,
the heels
I
with the
like
heel
the way
turn?
they've done it because New Day is still a thing. They're just in separate places.
Yeah.
Um,
When do you? But a heel turn has to come for one of them eventually, right?
yeah, and it's the New Day.
Yeah.
I think Xavier and Woods, same person. Xavier and Kofi should turn heel
Okay, you think it goes? Okay.
because I think that would be far more interesting because we expect Biggie to turn heel,
Yeah, because
but
Big E's
Biggie
the
is going to
easy
be
heel, right? Big E's the
either.
easy heel
Well, yeah, I
turn.
mean, he's already. I mean, they already did it. Um, but I would like. I think it'd be more interesting if Woods and Kofi were the heels
Yeah.
because if anyone's
I
gonna,
don't. I don't think Kofi. I could be wrong. I
mm,
just don't think Kofi is a good heel, though. Like Kofi, to me, he is a good heel, but what I mean is, he's more of an annoying heel than
they both are.
than a.
They both would be. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
but that's why I would keep them as a tag team as well, though.
yeah,
They
true.
could be the male iconics
Yeah, that is literally
who
what
they
it would
also
be.
shouldn't have split up.
Um,
But Biggie's too obvious, and Biggie they're gonna push to the moon.
True. I do wanna get back to Sami Zayn before
Mm.
we finish because you've got me on this Sami Zayn train now, Luke. He's all I can think about right now. I wonder, he's probably doing his documentary right now as we speak.
I really want to see that. I hope it's like I hope they actually do something with that. I'd love to see that. I want to see what he's
It
conjured up.
sounds like is it Logan Paul who he's invited to WrestleMania? It's like I hope Sammy absolutely batters him. To be honest.
So all I want is for like him to get up on the apron while like Kevin and Sammy are arguing, and they both like turn around and tell him to shut the fuck up and kick his head off.
Yeah, I know.
Because like it's so tough. I don't want either of those two to lose because they're both
Yeah.
great. But
Yeah.
I think Sammy should win.
So how let's do a little bit of fantasy booking to finish.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure we'll do this many times on this podcast. So if you had to book it from now, and obviously assuming that we decide Sami Zayn is the Money in the Bank winner, how would you get there?
Kind of similarly to his Intercontinental title run.
Okay.
I would have him. I would pair him with a big guy, just so he has someone to carry behind. Because I think, literally, the image of him like poking his head out from behind a big dude, and him like
would be amazing.
Yeah, I think he would do wonders with that. I think you have a big dude, but I think you also do play into. He is actually a fucking good wrestler.
Yeah, he's great.
So I think you balance it both ways.
Do you know what I think? Do you know what I think they almost need to do? Is have him play the character he is, but this is the way I would go with it. Is almost make it like a little bit of a psychotic thing, where he's so cowardly, but every now and again a switch turns, and he just turns into this like wrestling machine that then destroys people in the ring.
Sure.
When it really matters.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that could be interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, like I said, I think him having a big guy would be great, but I just don't know who that big guy would be.
Do you know what I would love it to be? I would love it to be a big guy that you really don't expect. So maybe someone who's currently a face.
I was just say, like, maybe this is in my head because me and my brother were talking about Montez Ford. Because there's a lot of talk of Dawkins turning heel on Ford, and that should not be the thing that happens.
No.
It should be Montez that turns heel, and then him and Bianca do a power couple thing, and Bianca is his powerhouse.
Yeah, that
He
would be
cowers behind
amazing. That
Bianca,
would,
and
that would be
Bianca like knocks
amazing.
people out. Like me and my brother were talking about that. I was like, that.
You know what I
Yes.
think would really be interesting, and I know, and maybe it's just because they've got history to a certain degree, but I think it would be really cool if Strowman is the big guy for Zayn. Like, I think that could be quite funny because
Maybe.
because you wouldn't expect it. I don't know where Strowman's going to go after this storyline with Shane.
Yeah, God knows. God
So I
knows.
don't think he really has anywhere to go. But if you use Strowman as somehow Zayn has brainwashed him, into believing this conspiracy after the Shane McMahon storyline for Strowman as well. Maybe it's like, look, see, it's a conspiracy. They're trying to bury you, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe he can get Strowman on side by doing that. And then the thing, so I agree with you on the big guy thing. I think that would be really cool. I think that's a route that you would go down. And I think it would actually be to the point of you would carry that all the way to Money in the Bank. The big guy storyline, the big guy bodyguard of Zayn. And you'd have them both be in the match. You'd have both of them be in the Money in the Bank match. Whoever the big man is, and Sami Zayn.
You know what? I think I actually have a better idea.
Go on.
Fake a face turn.
Fake a face turn. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely fake a face turn. And like team up with maybe even Kevin Owens. Maybe even team up with like Kevin Owens again, and actually have a bit of a tag team thing or something.
Do you know what I think would be good is if you're gonna do the fake a face turn thing, which they could definitely do with Zayn, because his character is in the right place to do it, and he's also good enough to do it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It would be interesting if it was like he helps someone to win a belt. In terms of he helps a face to win a belt from a heel.
In my head, both of these guys are in the Money in the Bank.
Okay.
And then it
gets like, to the stage. Go on.
Yeah. It's literally like, I don't care which one of us wins, but one of us has to. And then eventually, like the other guy's about to get it, and then he screws him over, takes it, and then he's jumping around like, I got you. And just being Sami Zayn.
I think the other way though, if you do go down the big guy route, is the way to play that one off is have it be that Zayn uses the big guy to get what he needs, right? Which is the Money in the Bank. That is his goal, is to get the Money in the Bank contract.
Yeah.
But it's not until after Zayn wins the Money in the Bank that the big man starts to realize. And that's when their relationship eventually kind of starts to break down a little bit, but not enough to kind of break them up yet. But it's that thing of planting seeds of, oh, I'm starting to realize he's using me, right?
Yeah.
But you carry it through until Zayn cashes in for the belt, and then he ends up facing whoever his big man is for the belt, because that big man would then become a face. I think they could do it that way.
Maybe it depends who that guy is.
Yeah. Is there anyone in NXT they could do it with?
I was thinking that, but I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know. I think, honestly, a perfect guy would have been Otis before the Gable stuff. Because I like him with Gable because they both got wrestling backgrounds. But I think if Sami Zayn was able to get Otis as his heater, I think that would have been funny. Because they're both really funny characters. I think
would have actually worked to a degree. He's not a massive guy, but he would have worked. Is Damian Priest?
Maybe, yeah. I kind of like what he's doing at the minute, to be fair.
I like what he's doing anyway.
And it wouldn't really fit Damian Priest's character because he is meant to be that lone wolf rockstar guy.
Yeah.
Like he is what
but we also don't need another Baron Corbin, right?
No, but he's better than Baron Corbin. He's what Corbin should have been.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Corbin is like the Swiss Army knife now. He's like the utility tool that he'll be wherever he needs to be, and he does a good enough job at everything.
Yeah, I think he's overused, and I think he's just used wrong sometimes, because I think
He's
he could be
overused and
great.
he's used wrong because there are times where he genuinely should be bigger than he is,
Yeah,
and then he's just not given the shot to go that far. They
it's
like
because he
all
is quite boring as
they
well.
like almost get him there, and then he
Yeah,
doesn't, and then they don't let him go.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with Zayn. I like the idea of him winning the Money in the
I
Bank.
kind of like the idea of him being that guy that, like, throughout the entire Money in the Bank match, he's just sat on commentary.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
anytime someone comes over, he cowers behind Michael Cole or something, or
yeah,
like
hundred
hides
percent,
under the desk or
100%.
something like that.
I think what we should do, I think what we should do in a future episode is we should each pick a wrestler
Mm.
and book their storylines for the year,
Oof.
right? And what I mean by that is maybe we do it, maybe we set up a thing of like we're going to book somebody into being a star,
Mm.
right? Into being a main eventer. So for you, maybe you choose Cesaro, and I would
Yeah,
choose
probably.
someone else. And we would see, because I think I love this fantasy booking stuff, and I think people are interested in it as well. Like I often watch fantasy booking videos online.
Oh yeah, Adam Blompier is the king of that. I
Yeah.
love Adam Blompier.
So
He's
so
great.
I think that would be fun to do. Also, I think it would be fun for us to do something like our top 10 list of matches. We've spoken about a few of them today.
Mm.
Um, but to go into more detail of any of those kind of things,
Yeah, for sure. I'm always terrible with stuff like that because
it chops
it
and changes, right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
does. So like
Hmm.
it would just be 10 matches I really like. It wouldn't necessarily be my
Yeah.
top 10 because I'm
One
always going to forget
one
something. But yeah,
future episode that I would really like to do, well, two actually,
yeah,
there's two. Um, One is most underrated or underused wrestlers.
for sure.
I think that could be an interesting
Hmm.
conversation,
Hmm.
which would remind us of some really interesting names that maybe people have forgotten. Because
Hmm.
there's a lot of smaller wrestlers back in the day that people don't even remember exists. It seems. Um,
I like a lot of those guys as well.
yeah.
Such a shame.
And then another one which I spoke to you about privately, Luke, is how would we get someone who doesn't watch wrestling into
Mm.
wrestling? Um, because I am actually a believer, and this is where I will leave it. I am a believer that I could make somewhat of a fan of anybody for wrestling, because I think that as long as I could get you to watch it long enough, you'd find something for you.
I think with YouTube, it's a lot easier these days
Yeah,
because you
and
can
I,
pick
and I
great
think
things.
that maybe
But
I'm wrong, but I think that's the absolute beauty of wrestling as an entertainment product.
mm,
Is I do think there's something for everybody. There are
mm,
those big bombastic storylines that feel like movies,
mm,
right? There are those smaller comedy kind of storylines. There are the drama aspects, which are like a soap opera.
mm-hmm.
You, and then you've got the athletics of making it feel like an actual sport. Um, because these
Yeah,
people are
I mean,
athletes.
you've got the comedy guys as well, like Orange Cassidy, and actually, you know what, Dan Housen. Dan
Yeah,
Housen is so funny,
yeah.
so funny. I love
Um,
comedy wrestling.
so yeah, I think that would be a really interesting conversation to have.
Mm,
If you've got any ideas, if you're listening to this show, please let us know in the comments, because
yeah,
we are more than up for taking viewer feedback and ideas.
absolutely, absolutely,
We
absolutely.
we're new at this. We do know how to podcast, but we're new at this wrestling podcast
Mm-hmm.
stuff, as you
Mm.
can tell, because this show is called the Power Hour, and it hasn't been an hour-long show. um,
That was intentional.
but
That was
that's
intentional.
our thing. Our Power Hour goes as long as we need it to go.
Absolutely. It's
Um,
like 3 Hour Energy that used to sponsor TNA and pop up all the
and
time.
I guess if you are down with that, you should subscribe.
Oh, you messed it up.
I'm not going the other way. I'm not going to be negative. I'm not going to say if you're not down
No, no,
with
no,
that.
no, no, no. Yeah, you should have just done. And if you are down with that, there are 2 words for you. Please subscribe. So close. So close. Maybe that should be the running thing. We each fuck it up every week.
Yeah. It'll be you next time, Luke. So we'll see what happens.
I'll just say the wrong podcast name or something.
We hope you've enjoyed it. As I said, please subscribe for more. We will bring you these episodes at least every 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking at the moment.
Maybe sometimes more often if we have extra time.
Yeah, if we have time.
We're going to kind of wait and see what happens and how successful these shows are.
Yeah.
So if you enjoy it, please let us know by liking, subscribing, leaving comments, and we will, we are YouTubers that actually read people's comments and reply and get in there and interact with people.
I mean, like Jordan said, if you any ideas at all, like we're open to pretty much everything.
And I'm sure also, do you know what? We are even to the point where we would be open to having guests on potentially.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. At times. So, if you're someone who'd be interested in coming on and sharing your opinions about wrestling as well, feel free to hit us up and we can have a discussion at least.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to leave it for this first episode.
I think so.
We will see you next time. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I hope you enjoy all the great wrestling. I hope WrestleMania Night 2 was as good as we hoped.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
And we will see you in a couple of weeks. Goodbye.